Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast. It's a show filled with family history, research, strategies and techniques, news and entertainment, and inspiration. And I'm your host, Louise Cooke. Hello and welcome to Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 189. I am just back from a trip out to West Coast, Huntington Beach, California. I know, it's a tough job. In March, having to go to Huntington Beach and Laguna Beach and San Clemente and Aliso Viejo. I know. It was beautiful out there, but we did get a big storm rolling in the day before we left. And I got a terrible case of food poisoning. Oh, my word. And the thing was, I did a Google Earth for genealogy presentation on Friday at the Aliso Viejo Library, and then on all day Saturday went great at Huntington Beach. Thank you to Hal Horrocks and all the folks out there. What a fantastic group. And so we did 4 sessions and everything. Went back to the hotel room, and within an hour, I didn't feel very good. And next thing I knew is I came down with a horrible case of food poisoning. And the thing was, Lacey had come out with me, my daughter, who is now full-time working with me with Genealogy Gems. And our plan was we actually scheduled, and this doesn't happen very often. The last time we did this was probably when we went to Alaska. We scheduled an extra day to our trip so that we could go to Disneyland. We love Disneyland. I mean, both being California girls at heart and born there, it's kind of in your blood, I guess. So we wanted to go spend the day at Disneyland, and I just looked at her and said, I'm not going anywhere. It's not going to happen. So Mommy had to stay home in the hotel room, and Lacey went, she had her ticket, and she went and did Disneyland by herself. But I got the blow-by-blow-by text. So next best thing, right? Anyway, I'm doing much better. I was thankfully I had that day. You know, I was feeling sorry for myself. I didn't go to Disneyland. But oh my goodness, thank goodness that we had that day planned, because I can't even imagine if I couldn't have traveled. It wouldn't have happened. I just would be living on the West Coast, or at least stuck there until the next plane out. So thankfully, when I flew home yesterday, I felt much better, and that's good because I have another big seminar coming up this weekend. We are headed to Shreveport, Louisiana, and I am so looking forward to that as well. I have not been there before, and there's a great group out there. Looking forward to a full day of genealogy. That's what we're going to do. And today, in this episode, which is number 189, I'm going to welcome 2 new guests. Now, these are stars of a new genealogy TV series. It recently premiered on BYU TV. And I'm going to throw in some Irish research tips. We could do that in honor of St. Patrick's Day, but I'd say Irish research tips are good anytime, anywhere you can get them. And I've got a fantastic segment from Your DNA Guide, Diane Southard. We also have an excerpt from the new Genealogy Gems book club interview. Sunny Morton's got that for you. And of course, you guys always send in great emails. So we've got those as well. So lots to cover. Let's get started. There's a new genealogy TV show on the air, the new reality series from BYU TV. It's called Relative Race, and it premiered on February 28th. Now, the show featured 4 married couples as they travel across the U.S. in search of long-lost relatives, armed with only paper maps, a rental car, a $25 per diem, and a flip phone. Would you do that? The show is a little different from some of the other ones that we've seen because DNA is at the heart of it. Ancestry DNA provided autosomal DNA test matches, and these are the people that each couple is trying to track down. So they start in San Francisco, and they end in New York City. So cameras are following the 4 couples more than 4,500 miles over just 10 days. They complete different challenges, just kind of like an amazing race, and they stay with newly discovered relatives along the way. In fact, quite a coincidence, I had dinner with somebody who was contacted to possibly be one of those hosting families, somebody who was related to our guests on the show today. And it turned out, for scheduling reasons, they didn't end up going with her. They went with somebody else they were related to, but sounds like it was going to be quite an adventure for everybody involved. And of course, along the way, as they're doing these challenges, they're staying with the relatives, the pairs start to be eliminated after they finish 3 times in last place. So later in this podcast episode, you're going to hear from one of the couples who competed on relative race. But for now, I just want to tell you that show times for remaining episodes do vary. But good news, the past episodes are available to watch for free on BYU TV on their website. So in the show notes for this episode, we'll have links for you to the relative race on BYU TV's website and to other resources that I'll mention, of course, throughout the show. So here's some great news for those whose family history research is made more challenging because of slavery. The New York Times ran an article in February. It was about new efforts to document the millions of people who lived in slavery in the U.S. and in Britain. The article explains that those who were enslaved were treated like property rather than people. So finding historical records that reliably and fully identify them is really difficult. In fact, one of the best resources available is runaway slave advertisements. The article explained that these notices, quote, described the runaway slaves' mannerisms, clothes, hairstyles, skin markings, teeth, and skills, as well as information about plantations that the escapees might have tried to reach, hoping to reunite with family members or less cruel past owners, end quote. So 2 new website projects aim to compile information from these notices into searchable databases. One site is Runaway Slaves in Britain, and that will document slavery in Britain in the 1700s. And the other is Freedom on the Move, covering U.S. newspapers. Both are still in the process of compiling their databases, so there's nothing there yet to search. But Freedom on the Move is looking for volunteer indexers, either individuals or groups like classrooms, maybe your genealogy society, to help out with the project. The New York Times article also links to existing runaway slave notice databases from Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Louisiana, and Mississippi, so you can get started with those now. Findmypast.com has just published an enormous new index to Irish Parish Records for 1670 to 1900. And we've been talking about this on the Genealogy Gems blog. The index has 40 million names from 1,000 parishes across all 32 counties of Ireland, and it links to digitized content at the National Library of Ireland, which I mentioned when it was published last July. Those images are free, but they're browse only. So this new index, it's really the key. Before the 1901 census, Irish Parish Records are the most important resource for finding ancestors over there, and Findmypast has made this index to those parish records free forever. Ancestry.com also recently announced that their version of the same index will be up in March 2016, so Ancestry subscribers should watch for that. And I'm told that the 2 companies actually worked together to create that index. I asked Brian Donovan, head of Irish Data and Development at Findmypast, to answer a couple of get-started questions on Irish research. And here's what he told us in answer to 3 questions. And remember, you'll find links to the databases that he's mentioning in the show notes. First question, how do I know if I'm ready to cross the pond back to Ireland? And what information should I have? Well, Brian says before looking through Irish records, you'll want to know as much as you can about the origins of your immigrant Irish ancestor. So obviously, you'll need to know their name and date of birth, but the really key piece of information is their place of birth. That's absolutely essential, especially if you have a common last name. At a minimum, you would need to know the county, but knowing the parish or townland is even more helpful. He says with our new parish records, however, it's much more possible to make progress knowing only the county. Additionally, knowing the names of other family members, such as the parents or siblings, will also help locate your Irish family before they left. Our second question to Brian was, what are the first Irish records that we should search? And does that change by time period? Brian says it definitely depends on the time period. If you know your ancestors migrated after 1901, that's easy. You start with the 1901 Census of Ireland. If they left Ireland prior to that, focus on the civil registers of births and, of course, the parish records. Civil registration began in 1864, so if they left before that, your best option is to look in the parish records and land records, like Griffith's valuation. He says this is why we're so thrilled to be releasing these parish records. A huge portion of Irish immigrated before 1864, so prior to this release, the only major record sets to work with were land records, though there are others that can be helpful too. And finally, we asked Brian what language or languages should we expect to encounter in Irish records. He says mostly English, but some parish records are in Latin, the official language of the Catholic Church, during the time period that the records span. Irish was widely spoken and many people could only speak Irish, but the language was never used in the official records. Thanks so much to Brian Donovan, of the head of Irish Data and Development at Findmypast, for kind of giving us a head start on our Irish research. And of course, check out the show notes for Genealogy Gems podcast episode 189. That's this one. And at our website, www.genealogygems.com. Just hover your mouse over podcast, click the Genealogy Gems podcast, and click the link that takes you to 189, and that is where you're going to find the links to all the different record sets that he recommended. Well, that's the latest in the genealogy news, and coming up next, we're going to hear from you in the mailbox.
Bring me a letter from my old hometown, one with some jokes from my old pal Jim Brown. Bring me a letter from that girl of mine, saying that she's longing for me all the time. Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad, but more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Here in the Genealogy Gems mailbox, I've got some emails. Marquise emailed me to report success on a couple of different genealogy goals. She says, Dear Lisa, thank you for the time and effort that you put into your podcast. I've been working on my family history on and off since I was 9 years old. While catching up on the Genealogy Gems podcast, I was inspired to start my own family history blog. Now that I have finished my master's degree, I have the ability to do it and feel less guilty about indulging in the guilty pleasure of researching my family history. I decided to give my blog the title of the Blakeslee Tribe. It is being hosted on Blogger. The address is blakesleetribe.blogspot.com. I have decided to make the blog a kind of research log. I'm hoping that this will prompt me to be more diligent about noting the research that I have done so that I do not repeat it. And then she ends with a great line. She says, quote, in writing this email, I'm also attempting to get over the hesitancy in writing a cold call email, end quote. Perfect. Great job on multiple fronts, Marquise. And finishing your master's degree, working on your family history, there should be nothing guilty about that pleasure from my point of view, although I know exactly what she means. Okay, here's another email. Kim from Alpine, Utah wrote in. She says, Dear Lisa, I'm trying to get back into a regular exercise routine, and with a foot of snow on the ground here, it's just not as appealing to go walking outside. However, I was in the middle of transcribing a will this afternoon, and I needed to get outdoors for some fresh air to clear my head. So I decided to listen to one of your podcasts while taking a brisk walk. I've downloaded all the Family History Genealogy Made Easy podcasts, and I'm making my way through them while I exercise. I just finished listening to your archived podcast episode number 31 on Immigration and Naturalization Records, Part 3 with Stephen Danko, not realizing that there were also Parts 1 and 2. When I got on my computer to look at the show notes, I realized there were 2 more episodes in this series to listen to, and I was thrilled. I have an incentive now to go walking at least twice more this week. The podcasts are the motivation for me to get out and get the blood circulating. She says, I was amazed at all there is to learn from ship manifests and have a plan to go back and review those I've already captured. I'm sure there are many new things I will be able to learn from them after learning about all the marks and notations. I also plan to look at the whole manifest to see what additional details there may be. I also plan on visiting Stephen's website and adding the notes to my resource binder. So much great stuff. Thank you. Thank you for producing this entire series of informative, educational, instructive, and interesting podcasts, as well as the Genealogy Gems podcast. Oh, she says they are a service to the genealogy community and help elevate the quality of our family history work. I wish you well and hope you continue producing them for a long time. Blessings to you and your family from a happy listener. Well, thank you. I do hope to publish them for a very long time, and I'm so glad that you're enjoying them. That's what's so cool about podcasts, is they're recorded, so you can jump into them at any time and get caught up, and we love having folks do that. And I appreciate hearing the feedback about the Free Family History Genealogy Made Easy podcast. I recorded that a couple of years ago. It was kind of a step-by-step series for beginners, but it also turned out to kind of be a great genealogy do-over experience for a lot of people who have been researching for a long time. You know, a lot of us, we get started in genealogy with more enthusiasm than maybe we have skills. And a few years into the process, we start feeling the repercussions of kind of some of our rookie mistakes, right? We've all made them. Or just starting to feel like, now that we know how to evaluate and cite sources better, let's start our research process over and kind of have a more discerning eye and kind of some more careful documentation. And you know, you're always evolving as a genealogist, so you can hear things and pick up on things on past episodes that maybe you've already listened to. But see, now you're in a different and new genealogist, and so something may just ring a bell. And, you know, I always believe there's the right time and the right place that you need information, and it will come to you that way. So that's what My Family History Genealogy Made Easy podcast kind of helps you do. Learn and progress in a step-by-step fashion. And I hope that if you're a beginner, or you're maybe ready to take a more systematic approach to your genealogy learning and your research, that you do give that podcast a try. It's on my website. It's under podcasts in the menu. Just select Family History Genealogy Made Easy podcast. You're going to see all 40-something episodes. They're all recorded and they're ready for you. There are several episodes toward the end on kind of getting started with a family history blog so that you can join in and blog like Marquise was talking about that she does. And there are several episodes toward the end on getting started with family history blogging so that you can join in and do what Marquise was doing. She was talking about starting her new family history blog. That's a way to do it. So check out the Family History Genealogy Made Easy podcast. And finally here, Matt's suggestion for Find a Grave. So Matt from St. Peters, Missouri, has a great suggestion. He says, Hi, Lisa. I have been a listener of the free podcast for a couple of years. Love the show. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. He says, I just wanted to take a minute to leave a quick suggestion for your audience. Okay, get ready, folks. When visiting memorials at the Find a Grave site, I would suggest leaving virtual flowers for as many of your relatives as you can. This will help leave a trail with your contact information where your cousins, who might also be researching your ancestors, have an easy way to contact you through your Find a Grave profile and contact information. You never know what sort of genealogy gems your distant and not so distant cousins might have in store for you. What a great suggestion, Matt. And it's a clever way to kind of open up opportunities to meet relatives and collaborate on your family history. So here's how to leave virtual flowers on Find a Grave. First, you got to make sure that you've created a free individual login from the homepage of the Find a Grave website. And after you log in, you go into an individual record where it shows your ancestors' tombstone information and click on the button that says Leave Flowers and a Note. Select among several different images of flowers, and you can choose whether to leave a note and your name. So other people who view this file can then click on your screen name and they can contact you through the website. Thanks to all of you for writing. And of course, you can all send me an email at genealogygems.podcast@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment.
From my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I'll bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
I'm a firm believer in taking responsibility for the life and future of my genealogy data. So instead of just uploading my information only onto someone else's genealogy website, I enter it into my master database on my computer into the premier genealogy software program. It's RootsMagic at rootsmagic.com. Genealogy software is RootsMagic's primary focus. It's not just a sideline. And I continue to be really impressed by their free online training videos and all the rich features they add. And here's the latest. Not only can you import a GEDCOM file from another program, but now with the release of RootsMagic 7.1, you can directly import any Family Tree Maker file with everything attached. That's everything attached. In fact, RootsMagic can import a bigger variety of older Family Tree Maker files than any single version of Family Tree Maker itself. It's just one more way that RootsMagic has been reaching out to the genealogy community and helping them care for their most precious data, their family tree. And there's even more to look forward to this year because RootsMagic has announced an agreement with Ancestry, and later this year they're going to be able to synchronize your family tree with Ancestry the same way that Family Tree Maker did. There's never been a better time to try or switch to RootsMagic. Head to rootsmagic.com and download the free RootsMagic Essentials today. You're going to love it. That's rootsmagic.com. As genealogists, we don't just have paper files anymore, but we also have digital files like our genealogy database and precious old photos that we've spent hours scanning. No matter where we upload our family tree or anything else relating to our family history on the web, the responsibility for the total safety and security of our files lies with us. That's why I'm so proud that Backblaze is the official backup of Lisa Louise Cooke and Genealogy Gems. For the past few years, I've been researching and I've been test driving backup services, and hands down, Backblaze is my choice. It's certainly the easiest service to use, and I love their free app that allows me to access all my files on my smartphone and my tablet. Plus, it backs up everything, including my video files. Yikes, I didn't realize before looking at Backblaze that other services skip over backing up videos. So don't wait another day to ensure that all your files are safe and secure. Back them up like I do with Backblaze. Head to backblaze.com/Lisa and scroll down. You'll see my smiling face there and a great offer. Just $50 for a year's peace of mind and the best cloud backup around. Go to backblaze.com/Lisa. Well, as you know, our featured book in the Genealogy Gems book club for the first quarter of 2016 has been Orchard House, How a Neglected Garden Taught One Family to Grow. And it's by Tara Austin Weaver. In today's episode, I want to share with you a highlight, the beginning part of Sunny Morton's interview with Tara, talking about Orchard House and the dynamics of her family and how she kind of saw that play out in their own family garden. Here's a sample of Sunny's interview with Tara. And of course, you can hear the interview in its entirety in the next Genealogy Gems Premium Podcast episode, which will be 133.
Hello, I'm Sunny Morton, and I'm back this month for our much-anticipated chat with the author of our Genealogy Gems Book Club featured book. For the past 2 months, we've been talking about Orchard House, a beautiful memoir and one of my new favorite books. It's written by Tara Austin Weaver, an internationally renowned writer, blogger, editor, traveler, and foodie. Welcome to the podcast, Tara. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
So Orchard House was really, when I started reading it, I read it as a gardening memoir, the story of you and your mother rebuilding and expanding your garden in her new house in Seattle. But it didn't take me long to realize that you weren't just talking about growing plants in this book. Tell us how Orchard House is about growing family relationships.
Well, I think that gardening and gardens are sort of a metaphor that you can apply to many aspects of your life, really. I mean, when we think about it, gardening at its essence is about sort of very intentionally trying to help things to grow. I mean, nature actually does a great job on its own. So when we cultivate gardens, we're getting involved and trying to sort of have the things that we want to grow flourish. And so that sort of metaphor can be used in any aspect of our life, really. I mean, whether it's, family or friend relationships or a career or passions, personal projects. I mean, really, years ago I heard a phrase that comes back to me so often, that what you put your energy into grows. And in this case, we really set out to garden together. But I think that, if you read the book, you'll know from my perspective, I was really hoping that that in creating this garden, we would really sort of create a place for the family to also grow and flourish, and even just, spend time together, because that is something. My mother was a single mother, and there were very few resources when we were growing up, and it was always, sort of just trying to get through it. So now in this latter phase of our life where she's, not entirely retired, but semi-retired, and my brother and I are grown and he has a family, like how can we sort of create the vessel for us all to come together and reconnect?
So where you sort of drew a distinction there between, things grow, right? Like plants will grow outside if you live in the right climate. Yeah, they'll grow, but you actually have to deliberately cultivate in order to get a garden with what you want in it. Well,
and I think that, that is sort of the distinction between nature and cultivated gardens, is that we are an actor in the function of cultivating, and we, in the same way that you would set up your house and sort of, put the armoire over there and, where it's going to look good. And that's what we're doing really in the natural world, where, we want the sunflowers by the gate, and, we want the ivy to stay in that corner. Gardening is a really fascinating metaphor for me, I think.
Okay, so continuing with that metaphor, how do you feel like the family relationships you talk about in this book, your mom, your brother, your nieces, how did they require different kinds of nurturing, different kinds of tending or pruning?
That is a good question. I think that, obviously going into this, you don't go in with all the answers. You sort of are trying to figure it out and making mistakes along the way. And again, this was the first time that my whole family was within sort of close geographic proximity. My brother and I had, left at 18 and gone off to, college, and I lived overseas, and I never actually expected that we would all live back in the same place. But coming back as adults, it does give you a different perspective, and yet you still have all of that history and all of those, potential struggles and wounds from your childhood to deal with. So it really was a matter of feeling our way forward. But I think that, what I like to think about with the garden is that in some ways it gave us a common focus. And instead of, just sitting facing each other and kind of trying to figure out all of our stuff and move forward, we had this thing to work on together. And I think that's pretty rare as adults. I mean, I suppose there are some families that are super close and decide to, renovate a house together, but that would not be my family. And I do think, as adults, we generally, have our own projects, and it's unusual to have sort of this multi-generational family project. And I think that in some ways the garden, particularly with my mother and myself, sometimes it's hard for us to express our affection to each other. We're very different people, and there's a lot of baggage there. But sometimes I think the garden is kind of the surrogate. Like we have a hard time loving each other in kind of a pure way, but we put all that affection and love and time and energy into the garden.
You've probably heard me talking about MyHeritage's clever and advanced search technologies. Recently, I heard from Daniel Horowitz, their Chief Genealogical Officer, the news that they've released a new generation version of their proprietary Record Detective technology. And according to Daniel, Record Detective 2 is what it's called. It significantly builds on the original Record Detective, adding over 2.2 billion new matches to historical records. Now, in case you're not familiar with Record Detective, I think of it as the same concept as when you're shopping online and the website offers you additional product options based on what you're looking at. It's like, if you like this record, you may also like this other record that seems to relate to the same person. The first version of Record Detective was only able to find information when there was at least one family tree profile on MyHeritage that matched the record. But Daniel says that the new Record Detective 2 adds direct record-to-record matches, even for records that have no matching family tree profiles on MyHeritage. And it has yielded a staggering 2.2 billion additional highly accurate matching documents. So that's pretty cool. And as you know, MyHeritage is a sponsor of this free podcast. The site does offer free memberships for family websites and access to an institutional version at family history centers and many libraries. So there are several ways to access this powerful record searching technology, worldwide family trees, and of course all the other great content, even if you're not a paid subscriber. So that's pretty cool and a great reason to get started with MyHeritage if you haven't already. You can visit myheritage.com. Well, I was at the Roots Tech 2016 National Genealogy Conference in Salt Lake City last month. There was a lot of promotion. It was for a new genealogy-themed TV show, and this month it premiered on BYU TV. And don't worry, because if by chance your cable company doesn't offer BYU TV, you can watch it live and streamed online as well. Now, what's the premise of the show? Well, it's 4 teams, and they race from San Francisco to New York in 10 days. Their goal is to find unknown relatives, kind of like yours, the ones all of you listening. But they have to complete challenges and not get eliminated along the way. And one of those couples is Janice and Patrick Wright from Anchorage, Alaska. And they're joining me today here on Genealogy Gems. Hi, Janice and Pat.
Hi, Lisa. How are you doing?
I am doing great. And I got a chance to sit down today and watch episode number 1. And that was a lot of fun. You know, when you get into a new reality show, you're like, okay, I don't know, am I going to stick with this or whatever? And I got to, I was watching it. And then, you kind of get caught up and you just want to see, well, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Did you have a lot of fun?
Oh, we definitely had a lot of fun. We knew nothing that was going to happen. So everything that you see is complete surprise to us.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I bet. I wanted to start at the beginning because in the first episode, you said, and I don't remember, maybe it was you, Janice, who said this, genealogy is very important to us. And even though this is a genealogy-themed show, I don't think I heard any of the other couples say that. So, Janice, how is genealogy important to you and your family?
I guess over the years, growing up and raising my own family, there was just a lot of curiosity. I do have a pretty close family. I know all my first cousins and my second cousins, my aunts and uncles. And, I met my great-great-grandmother, my great-grandmother. And I do know who the great-greats are, but I don't know why. I guess just growing up, I always wondered, who do I come from? What was my husband's life? Who does he come from? And so with that in mind, I just started getting into really documenting down and let's have it so I can say this person is from this person, and just so I have some history to leave a legacy for our kids to know, because I know my 2 sons will not go and do all this work.
At least not now.
Yeah,
right?
Not now. Maybe when they get to be our age as, parents, they would do that. But it just kind of fascinated me. And so meeting people in person that were, from my bloodline and his bloodline, it was, you felt like you were just meeting a family member immediately.
And specifically, this show was kind of a hot button for us because it's kind of like, the very popular series Amazing Race, but it's got the genealogy twist to it. And that is a hot button for us. And we thought it would be really, really interesting and quite an adventure, being as we know there are relatives and strings of family trees that we don't know about. And Ancestry.com and Ancestry DNA and the producers at LensWorks and BYU TV, they brought it all together, and it worked out really well. I mean, it's very interesting, it's very compelling, and just actually knowing that there's relatives that you have out there that you know nothing about, and they're there. You could walk by them on the street. It was a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could just walk by them on the street and not know. And of course, one of the primary ways that they were connecting you with people was through the DNA testing. And I'm curious, Pat, did you take the DNA test before the show, or had you already been tested before you applied?
We were about to start that process because we both have Ancestry.com accounts. And we were going to go that direction. And then this show came up and I found it online, and the particular producers had a casting call out on the open internet, and they looked for about 1,200. They looked at about 1,200 couples across the country, and through their process, whatever their process was, the producers at LensWorks, they whittled it down to 4 couples, and we were going to take the DNA test, but then the show provided that for us, so that was great. I mean, because the DNA test tells you a lot of stuff, and it's very compelling.
Yeah, exactly. I'm assuming you did an autosomal test through Ancestry?
Ancestry DNA.
Right. So the autosomal being a test that can reach back about 6 generations. Mm-hmm. And the further back, of course, the more challenging it gets. So you're connecting with people who you probably are within about 6 generations of being able to trace back where you are together. I'm assuming oftentimes it's far closer than that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Great. Now, I know there's always an element of hardship in reality TV, and they didn't starve you, but they did do something. They took your cell phone away, didn't they?
That was kind of rough. It made it a little challenging to navigate, but depending on the couples, the age of the couples, where everybody's from. We had one young couple on that, we figured, okay, well, maybe they'll be handicapped, how the millennials are with their technology. And we're one of the older couples, so we've been around a while reading maps, so we figured we could figure this thing out.
Yeah, that was cute, you guys saying, oh, yeah, we still know what maps are. We can deal with this.
But the thing is, too, we live in Alaska, and so we only have, two roads, one in and one out. And it's, even though we've lived here for, such a long time, and we do travel once in a while, we really don't have those highways down. So that became a little bit of a challenge for us, paying attention to which roads are faster. And the maps really were state maps, not residential maps. So that, too, was a challenge.
Based on the template of the show, you had your state maps to get to where you were going, the state and the city. But that's pretty much all the assistance that those state maps give you, because there isn't small town maps there. So you're kind of, when you get to your town, you're on your own. And that's where all the craziness of the show comes in.
It gives it an element of entertainment for that. But I also, on the days where we did have the traffic jams and stuff that where we got there later, I just kept thinking, I don't want to waste my evening with my family, my new family. I want to have more time with them so I can dig into where we, and try and find out how we're related.
Right.
But I know that when the show's over, we're definitely going to get back together with some of them that we weren't able to pinpoint it exactly.
Well, so just to explain to everybody listening, what they were doing was having to travel to each location and then get to hopefully pass the task at hand so that you got the address and you got a chance to go. And then you don't know when you're walking in the door then whose relative they are.
No, we don't.
Correct. Basically, the template is every day is an individual race. Each day, each morning you get up, and you're given a state and a city. You race to that city. You have to stop when you see the sign for that city or get your picture, take a selfie in front of the town sign or something with the town's name on it. Then you send that picture to the producer, in which they stop your time, and then they send you a challenge on your phone. They send you a text. And then you have to go somewhere in that town to do that challenge. Once you complete that challenge, then you are given the address only to your relative. So once you get through all that and you get to your relative's house, when we walk up to the door and knock on the door, it's a little disheartening because you're excited, you're enthusiastic and curious because you don't know if it's Jan's relative or my relative.
You're just like, who are we going to meet? This is so exciting.
And what you're doing is, didn't you spend the night at their house? And basically, these are strangers. You don't know these people.
That's part of the show.
Yeah.
And they part of the rules are that if you don't spend the night at their home, you're eliminated.
Oh, wow.
But, they do their homework prior to us being on there. They had to have the permissions of the people for us to come in. We had background checks on ourselves. They had background checks on them.
Yes.
And so you're safe. Mm-hmm. That part I was not worried about. But, you don't know whether your personalities are going to be similar or way different.
Lifestyle, political, factions, alignments, religious alignments, it's just very exciting. You're meeting a relative that you've never met before, and it's just awesome.
Yeah. I thought it was very significant that it wasn't totally comfortable for you in episode number 1. Okay. Janice, there was the adopted daughter of your relative, correct?
Yes.
And the family dynamics can be very tricky, and we talk about DNA practically every episode here on our show. And one of the things that I think gets glossed over sometimes is that oftentimes people use DNA to solve adoptions or mysteries and that kind of thing. And oftentimes it became a mystery because not that many people wanted people to know about it. And so there can be issues around family and how families became separated and how adoptions occurred and all those kinds of things. So it's not always guaranteed going to be happy, we're all family. Did you anticipate some of that before you encountered? Did you did you kind of go in initially naively thinking, oh, awesome, we're going to meet these people? But, there's some surprises, I'm sure.
For that episode, it totally was a surprise for me. I found out, so my father was adopted by his stepfather when he was a child, so I never knew my real grandfather. And so that was in the back of my mind. I did think this could happen. And in fact, that relative was related to my real grandfather.
The very first one.
He was. Okay. I was trying to understand what the relationship was. Was he like the son of the real grandfather?
No, it went back about 4 generations.
Oh, it did.
We were related to us. One of our great-great-grandfathers was a Jesse Clem. Mm-hmm. And so he, as it goes down, was related to the real grandfather of the real father of my dad. So, just having known that later in life, that he was, he had his real mom, but his mom remarried, and the stepfather adopted him and his sister. So to me, that was just a mystery that was kind of nice to meet someone finally that came from that bloodline. Mm-hmm. And that's all that was on my mind. But when she kept talking about being, and she was adopted at 30 years old by this man. So
that's what I thought when I'm thinking, I'm sure she's sane as an adult, not a child. Yeah. That was very odd. It made me uncomfortable because I didn't want her to think we were intruding on her. We were doing this research for the show, and we were, all trying to get to know him. I was not trying to intrude in her space, but that was the feeling of the evening. Oh, gosh, I know.
I tried hard just to be, nice and kind about it. And I'll keep in touch and try to find out, exactly how we're related and all that, and not make her feel like I'm intruding on her life that way. But, yeah. So anyways, we kind of talked a little bit afterwards, and I think she felt a little more relaxed, but that wasn't on camera. So I didn't get to add that in. You only get so much time to add that in. But they were both really, really nice to open up their doors and let us come in anyway. So strangers.
Sure. Now, Pat, you guys sat down with them, and it was kind of neat watching you sit with them at the computer and looking at Ancestry and kind of seeing the tree and everything, because a lot of times we watch these genealogy reality shows, and it's some celebrity, or it's even the announcer who's just explaining what happened, and nobody ever gets to see people actually looking at it together to non-professional genealogists. But Pat, had you had much experience with working with family history or using the Ancestry website at all? Or was that kind of new to you to kind of see it all laid out there?
Very new to me. The genealogy site, Ancestry.com, was new to me. Mine's a little wonky. I'm getting there. I have a lot. It's very time consuming. Janice is a lot farther down the road than I am. She's back to the early 1600s. But yes, I am familiar with it, and I'm familiar with, how it's laid out and presented and how you have to build your tree and the things that come with it. And Ancestry.com does a great job with it because they make it easy. You click on the leaves and it sends you the right way. There's a couple snags or pitfalls that you can run into because names are very similar, and you got to be careful and really cross-reference things when you're building your tree and as you find these people to make sure they're truly matches. But Ancestry.com does a pretty good job of showing you and giving you the tools that you need to make those connections, make sure they're aligned and they're correct, because there were so many names and similar name changes and just like everybody hears when people come over, going through Ellis Island, they drop the I, or the Polish people drop the ski, or, the Italians drop the vowel, or Irish people, like with my specific case, the maiden name was Kavanagh, and it went from a K, Kavanagh, coming out of Ireland, to a C, Kavanagh, after they came through Ellis Island. So little things like that, and similar first and middle names.
Right. Do you have an interest now in continuing to pursue some of that research, or are you going to leave that to Janice?
I do, but I think Janice is still a little more in tune with it. She's a little more emotional about it. For me, it's historical. For her, it's personal. And it's funny how the different interests can be slightly variated. Mine is historical. I want to know. Hers is more of an emotional thing. It's a little bit different.
Would you agree with that, Janice?
Somewhat, yes. I find it an adventure too. I don't know that it's all emotional. I like the history as well. But the one thing that I truly, truly enjoyed on this adventure we had, every family member was so different, and they went down different paths. But there were a couple of them that were very, very much into their own family genealogy, and I learned a few tricks with them. And I think, your podcast and things like this are what can help people kind of, I didn't think about trying that out. Let me go do that when you're sitting there doing your research, or
even become more comfortable with knowing that there's a lot of like-minded people out there,
right,
that are looking. They're simply looking and they're curious.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and you have information that you're gathering that's going to become a legacy that you get to hand on to those boys of yours. And hey, it was really nice to see a couple who's been together for 30 years on TV. That doesn't happen very much.
I know.
And I know that one of your assignments in that first episode was to renew your vows. Dennis, tell me all about it.
It was our 30th anniversary in 2015, and going on this trip, there was some time when I'm just kind of by myself, like, maybe on another trip we'll go renew our vows. And then boom, we got that challenge. And I looked over and I was like, I'm going to cry, because I was totally just thinking about that. And I thought it was, even though it was a race, we kind of tried to slow down a little bit and absorb the moment and just, look into each other's eyes and remember why, we're here. Here we are.
Absolutely.
Right.
It was nice. I really, really enjoyed it.
Well, any other surprises or things that we should look for in the upcoming episodes?
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenges are going to be quite comical. At least they were for us.
Well, it's neat because when you get to the market or you get to the town that you're going to, the challenge we've picked up on really quick was the challenge has something to do with either what your relative likes or what your relative does.
Or where they live, some history in the hometowns.
Right.
So it was just, you read into them too, trying to figure it out. And you have a lot of time when you're just driving and driving and driving and it's boring. And then all of a sudden, boom, you have to quick think and get moving really quick. And it's just, it builds up some excitement. But I can tell you by the end of the day, we were pretty tired.
I bet. What did your boys think about these two parents going off on this adventure?
I don't think they truly believed we were going to do it until we actually left.
For them, I think it's kind of like a shake your head moment because we're pretty active. Even in our 50s, we're very active. We do a lot, and we do a lot with our boys. And they just kind of shake their heads and just kind of said, that's our parents.
Yeah, there's mom and dad.
Very cool. Well, if you want to see those boys, mom and dad, on TV, you can see them on Relative Race. And like I said, it's on BYU TV. But go check out relativerace.com because, boy, they've got a very comprehensive website. And like I say, you can watch live and streaming the videos and see some of the behind the scenes and what the Wrights were up to and all the other couples involved in the show. It sounds like a lot of fun. Good for you guys for getting out there and taking it on. And we all hope that you continue on with your family history, too.
Oh, we definitely will.
Thank you so much for having us.
My youngest child, Eleanor, is nearly 8, so it was fun to have a 2-year-old over the other day. She loved following Eleanor around, and Eleanor was equally thrilled to have someone to mentor in the ways of big girl play. I took special delight in listening to my daughter's patient and surprisingly complete answers to our guests' constant inquiries of why. It got me thinking about the whys of genealogy, and especially of genetic genealogy. I decided that there are 3 main reasons to have your DNA tested for genealogical purposes. First, it is a primary record. In genealogy, primary information is given by a source who has first-hand knowledge of an event, with the best primary information being created at or around the time of this event. I think we can safely say that DNA falls into that category on both counts. Therefore, it is an excellent source of genealogical information and should be obtained as part of a thorough genealogical search. Second, it is a unique record. DNA possesses several qualities that make this record type stand out from the rest. First and foremost, it cannot be falsified in any way. No name change, no deception, no miscommunication or misspelling can tarnish this record. Even if it's not a complete record of our family history, the story that it does tell is accurate. And third, it is a physical link to our past. So much of genealogy work, especially in today's digital world, is intangible. We add ancestors to our pedigree charts with a click of our mouse, having no idea of their physical characteristics, never once setting foot in the same place as they did, or knowing if they preferred bread and butter or toast and jam. But with the advent of DNA testing, I am able to see a physical connection between me and my ancestor. The first time I saw it seems somewhat unremarkable. It was just a blue line on top of a gray line, representing the location in the DNA where I had the same information as my cousin. But that line meant that we had both inherited a physical piece of DNA from our common ancestor, Lucy J. Clonch. That realization didn't add names or dates to my pedigree chart. Lucy had been on my chart since the beginning. But it did add a sense of purpose and reality to my genealogical work. In short, it inspired me to know more about Lucy and to tell her story because I felt inextricably tied to it. Perhaps many of you don't need a DNA test to feel similarly motivated. You already understand what I learned. Her story is my story. But because I have her DNA in me, I'm able to take that idea one step further. Because she lives on in me, my story is her story, so I better make it a good one. Has your DNA motivated you to find out more about your story? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know. You can email me at guide@yourdnaguide.com.
Profile America, Saturday, March 12th. The right to vote began to receive some supervision more than 2 centuries ago when Massachusetts acted this month in 1801 to register voters. At that time, the franchise was limited to men, usually those of local repute and owning property. Town assessors drew up publicly posted lists of voters. If any voter was omitted, documents proving eligibility were accepted. The practice caught on very slowly. Only after the Civil War did voter registration become widespread. Today, North Dakota is the only state without a registration requirement, although proof of residency must be shown. In 2014, out of a voting age population of nearly 220 million citizens, over 64% were registered to vote. In Massachusetts, registration was just under 62%. Profile America is in its 19th year as a public service of the U.S. Census Bureau.
Thank you so much for joining me today for Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 189. Of course, you can find the show notes on our website, genealogygems.com. Again, hover that mouse over podcast in the menu, go to Genealogy Gems podcast, and click through to number 189 for links and information and the text of everything we've been talking about here. So I've got a thought for you. So all of these little and big changes in laws, like voter registration laws, and every historical event created opportunities for a paper trail. Voter registration is just one example. Think about it. For every event in your ancestor's life, what paper trail may have been generated? Where might it still survive? You may need to think kind of outside the box of the usual genealogy records. You may need to look outside the box, outside the usual big box genealogy websites and libraries to track down some of these records. But these can be the most fascinating records and stories that you're going to find. May the genealogy serendipity fairy shine a light on even the faintest paper trail for you and lead you to your ancestors' names and stories. Until next time, thanks for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.